After my husband's will was read, my son-in-law said, "You're old, let us handle everything now." He took my bank papers and laughed, "You're powerless." My daughter crossed her arms and watched. My voice trembled as I said, "You'll learn just how wrong you are when you see what I've been holding back." My husband Roger died 3 months ago. We were married 41 years. He was quiet, steady, not one for big shows of emotion. But he was loyal. Dependable. A good man. We lived in Missoula, Montana our whole marriage. It's not a flashy place, but it was home. I was still grieving when Ashley and Kyle showed up again. Ashley is my only daughter. Kyle is her husband, a smug piece of work I never trusted. The kind of man who wears expensive watches but complains about paying for dinner. I kept my opinions to myself while Roger was alive, but now it was just me. The will reading happened in a small office near downtown. I remember the smell, old wood and coffee. The lawyer, Mr. Dalton, looked uncomfortable. He was holding the envelope like it might explode. Roger had left everything to me. The house, the land, the retirement accounts, the savings. All of it. He had also set up a trust for any future grandkids, but Ashley and Kyle weren't getting anything directly. Not unless I gave it to them. Mr. Dalton read Roger's words out loud. I could barely keep my hands still. I didn't know he had made those choices. I thought maybe he'd split things evenly. But Roger had protected me. He knew what Ashley and Kyle were like. Maybe he saw it clearer than I did. Right after the will was read, Kyle leaned back in his chair like he was stretching. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "You're old," he said. "Let us handle everything now." I thought maybe I'd heard him wrong. But then he leaned over, quick as a flash, and pulled the manila envelope out of my handbag. That envelope had all my important papers. The deed to the house. My banking information. Passwords. Copies of everything Roger left me. He opened it like it was his. Like I didn't matter. "You carry this around like it means something," he said, flipping through the pages. "You're powerless." I couldn't speak at first. I looked at Ashley. She didn't stop him. She didn't say a word. She just crossed her arms and stared at me. Cold. Something broke in me right then. They thought I was weak. A sad old woman who lost her husband. Someone they could push around. I straightened up in my seat and looked Kyle right in the eye. "You'll learn just how wrong you are when you see what I've been holding back," I said. He laughed. But Ashley looked a little nervous. Just for a second. They didn't know what I had done in the weeks after Roger died. They didn't know what I'd found when I went through the safe in the garage. Or what I'd set in motion with the help of a man Roger trusted more than anyone else. And I wasn't about to let them walk over me. Not after everything I sacrificed to raise Ashley. Not after the lies I started uncovering, some of which had Ashley's fingerprints all over them. They thought I was alone. They were wrong. I didn't go home with them after the will reading. I told them I was tired, which was partly true. But mostly, I needed time to think. I needed to breathe without Kyle's smug voice in my ear and without Ashley's blank stare making me feel like I was the problem. I drove back to my house alone. The house Roger built with his own hands, room by room over the years. They wanted to take that from me like it was nothing. Like I hadn't lived every moment in those walls, made every meal, cared for every creak and leak and winter storm. When I got inside, I didn't cry. I didn't even sit down. I went straight to the garage. The safe was hidden behind a false panel Roger installed behind his tool rack. I found the code in one of his old fly fishing notebooks a week after the funeral. He knew I'd look there eventually. He always said, "If something ever happens to me, you'll figure it out. You're smarter than you think." Inside the safe was more than I expected. Much more. There were documents, bank accounts I didn't know about. One in Canada. Another in Arizona. and a folder labeled simply, A&M Holdings. I flipped through it. Property records. Business contracts. Rental agreements. Dozens of pages showing Roger had been investing quietly for years. And not just in our names. There were mentions of a silent partner. Someone named Max. I called Max the next day. He was a gruff, no-nonsense man in his 60s, lived out in Kalispell. When I told him who I was, he was quiet for a while. Then he said, "Roger always said you were the only person he ever trusted. If you found me, that means you're ready." We met at a diner off Route 93. Max laid it all out. Roger and Max had been flipping properties together for almost 2 decades. Low risk, under the radar stuff. The profits had been rolled into more properties. Some were commercial, some residential. All rented out, all turning steady income. And all of it was in a company registered to me. Roger never wanted Ashley or Kyle to know. He told Max flat out, "If I die first, she'll need protection from them." That same day, I signed over power of attorney to a lawyer Max recommended. I wanted to shield everything. Put the assets into a living trust with very clear limits. I even had a clause added that if anyone tried to take control of my affairs through manipulation or coercion, the trust would dissolve into a charity of my choosing. I wasn't going to be anyone's fool. But Kyle didn't give up. He showed up at my house a few days later with Ashley. They let themselves in with the spare key I hadn't thought to move yet. I came out of the kitchen and found Kyle sitting in Roger's recliner like he owned the place. "Time to be realistic, Joyce," he said. "This house is too big for you. You need to start thinking long-term. Retirement community, assisted living maybe. You've got money, you should use it." Ashley stayed quiet. She just stared at me again. Cold. Unblinking. I said nothing. I just walked over to the wall safe behind the cabinet in the living room. They didn't even know it was there. I opened it slowly, pulled out a thick folder, and handed it to Kyle. He opened it, expecting to find something he could use. Instead, his face twisted with confusion. "What is this?" "Deeds," I said calmly. 15 of them. To properties I own. He flipped through them, faster now. His mouth started to move but no words came out. Ashley looked over his shoulder. "What is this? How?" I smiled. "This isn't just a house, Kyle. It's leverage. And I have a lot more than just this." He stood up fast, red in the face. "You think this makes you untouchable?" "No," I said. "But it makes me dangerous. You might want to remember that." They left, furious. Ashley slammed the door behind her. I watched them drive off without a word. I knew then that this wasn't over. They would come back. And when they did, they'd bring something worse than words. 2 weeks went by. I didn't hear a word from Ashley or Kyle. I thought maybe they'd finally realized they crossed a line. Maybe they were embarrassed. Maybe they'd just stay gone. I actually let myself believe that. Then I got a letter. It came by certified mail. From a law office in Bozeman. The envelope was thick. Inside was a notice: Ashley and Kyle had filed for conservatorship over me. I stared at the page for a long time, trying to steady my breathing. They were claiming I wasn't mentally fit to handle my own finances. That grief had clouded my judgment. That I had shown erratic behavior since Roger's passing. That I was endangering my long-term well-being by refusing help. They even listed things like paranoia, forgetfulness, and impulsive financial decisions. Lies. All of it. But what hit hardest, Ashley had signed it. That's when I realized it wasn't just Kyle. She was in on this. All the way. I called Max. He didn't hesitate. "We'll fight this. They're bluffing. They think you're alone. They don't know what you've got lined up. He was right. I had hired a financial advisor, a therapist, and even a part-time caregiver. Not because I needed help, but because I knew how these things worked. I was documenting everything. Every conversation, every visit. I had prepared for war. But they didn't stop there. The next twist came fast. My power and internet went out one evening. I called the utility company. They said my account had been transferred by a family member. Then my bank card was declined. When I called the bank, they said someone had attempted to log into my online banking using a reset code sent to a different email. One I didn't recognize. Kyle had been trying to steal my access from the inside. They were trying to shut me down, piece by piece. I reported everything. Froze all my accounts. Had new locks put on the house. Installed security cameras. Still, I wasn't sleeping well. Then came the worst part. I got a visit from Adult Protective Services. A woman named Susan showed up at my door, very polite, very soft-spoken. She said there had been a report that I might be suffering from early dementia. That I might be isolated, confused, financially vulnerable. I invited her in. I answered every question. I handed her every document, every receipt, every record I had. She stayed for over 2 hours, taking notes. Before she left, she said something I'll never forget. Between you and me, Mrs. Larson. You're one of the sharpest people I've ever interviewed. But if I were you, I'd be careful. Whoever filed this report knows the system well. I asked her point blank, was it my daughter? She didn't answer. But she didn't have to. Later that night, I sat in the kitchen and looked out at the dark yard. I thought about Roger. About how he used to say, sometimes, the people who betray you, they've been building to it for years. I couldn't help wondering how long Ashley had been waiting to take me down. And how long she'd been hiding who she really was. But they weren't ready for what was coming next. Because I hadn't just been preparing to protect myself. I'd been building something behind their backs too. Something that would rip the ground out from under them, legally, financially, and publicly. They thought they were smart. But they forgot who taught Ashley everything she knows. I waited. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed everything in place. Kyle and Ashley had declared war, and I had to make sure my strike would leave nothing standing. The court date for the conservatorship hearing was set. I had less than 2 months to prepare. I spent every single day gathering. I met with Max, my lawyer, my therapist, my doctor, and even Susan from Adult Protective Services again. I built a file, thick and solid. Full of proof that I was not only stable, but sharp, organized, and in control. But I wasn't done yet. I dug into Kyle. Turns out, Roger had already done some of that. In one of the folders from the garage safe, there were old printouts of Kyle's early credit history, a background report, and a suspicious note from Roger that simply said, "Check Arizona." I did. I hired a private investigator. Not some cheap online service. A real one. The man had been in law enforcement before he retired. I paid him well. He got results fast. Kyle had a past. A sealed bankruptcy from 10 years ago. He'd taken out huge loans in someone else's name, his own grandmother. She never pressed charges, but it explained a lot. Even worse, he had 2 shell companies under fake names that were funneling rental money from a handful of properties that weren't his. Turns out, he had been slowly pushing Ashley to borrow against their own home, forging paperwork to move cash into business ventures that were really just dead-end scams. He wasn't just a manipulative husband. He was a thief. But Ashley, her betrayal was different. I found emails. Dozens. I knew the password to her old Gmail account, same one she used in high school. I guess she never thought I'd try. Inside were messages between her and Kyle, going back 2 years. They talked about me like I was a piece of furniture. Something to be moved out of the way. Once she's out, we can renovate and sell the house. She's slowing down. We'll get her to sign something eventually. And the worst one, I don't care if she breaks down. She's had her time. They talked about me like I was already dead. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. Then I made a call to a journalist I knew through a local women's group. Her name was Dana. She had written articles about elder abuse and financial scams. I gave her everything. I didn't ask her to keep my name out of it. I told her to print it all. When the court date came, I wore the same navy dress I wore to Roger's funeral. Ashley and Kyle showed up in matching gray outfits, like they were starring in a commercial. They looked calm. Too calm. The judge asked if I needed help managing my affairs. I answered clearly, "No, Your Honor." My lawyer handed over everything. Financial statements, therapy records, statements from my doctor and Susan, and even camera footage showing Kyle snooping around my house late one night. Then I dropped the bomb. The private investigator took the stand. Then the forensic accountant. Then Dana, the reporter, who confirmed her article was going live that night. Ashley's face started to crumble halfway through. Kyle tried to argue. He got loud. Called me unstable, vengeful, and even accused me of turning Ashley against her own family. The judge silenced him. Then I stood up and read Ashley's own words. Her email. That line, "She's had her time." I looked her right in the eyes when I said it. You wanted me gone. But I'm not leaving. You are. The judge ruled instantly. Case dismissed. Conservatorship denied. The court called the report an obvious case of manipulation and financial ambition. He referred Kyle to the state attorney for fraud. He also ordered an investigation into their joint finances. 2 days later, Dana's story went live. Missoula widow outsmarts daughter and son-in-law's financial scheme. It went viral. Not just locally, statewide. People sent me messages, flowers, even donations, which I declined and redirected to a local women's shelter. Kyle was arrested 3 weeks later. Fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Ashley tried to distance herself, but it didn't work. Her name was on too many documents. She wasn't arrested, but she lost her job. Her friends stopped calling. Her name became a punchline in town. And the trust? That money meant for the grandchildren? I rewrote it. Any future child from Ashley and Kyle would not receive a dime. I gave the entire trust to a scholarship fund in Roger's name, for single mothers returning to school. He would have liked that. I haven't spoken to Ashley since the hearing. She left town. Rumor is, she moved in with Kyle's sister. I'm not sure if she visits him in jail. As for me, I'm still in my home. Still managing my rentals. I even started mentoring other older women in town on how to protect their finances. We meet twice a month at the library. I may have been married for 41 years. I may have lost the love of my life. But I am not powerless. They thought they could take everything from me. But in the end, they lost everything they tried to steal. And I'm just getting started.